proper format or any introduction or anything, and I wasn't even expecting to record, to be honest. So for anyone listening to this later on, I'm Jean Lucas. I'm from. We have a we have a group here. Not sure if I was able to tell you, Michelle, what we have here, but we have a group with like 400 CTOs in Brazil, and we all use WhatsApp together. And we use WhatsApp together just like to share information between one another. We also have like a Slack group. Sometimes we have a small Telegram group for CTOs as well. It's not that uh, active as well, but we do have that as well. And this group is kind of funny because we were able to do a small conference just between ourselves. And it's not like a heavily community guided group. It's just something that happened. It's from 2016 and we started growing slowly and we have like 400 people, about 400 people. And from huge companies to small startups. So that's what we have. So Bart and Felipe, they're from our group. And if you want to have like some seconds to introduce yourself, say how you got to write the book that you just wrote, and tell us what is going on overall.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm hoping to also hear about what you guys do, Bart and Felipe. So I am co-founder of Geocodio, which is a software as a service company. We do geocoding, reverse geocoding, and data appends for US, Canada, and a little bit of Mexico. We do reverse geocoding only for Mexico right now. And so my husband and I started the company almost 8 years ago as a side project, grew it slowly without funding. I went full-time on it in 2017. And then he went full-time in 2018. So actually next month is 4 years of me working on it full-time. It's 3 months for him this month. 3 years, sorry. And before that, I was a product manager, and my sort of functional expertise within that was in interviewing customers. So that's what I did when I was a product manager working in financial services. And when started working on my company full time, got to really interview a lot of customers. And so over the years, other founders have come to know that that's an area of specialty for me and will reach out to me. And whether it's just random people on Twitter or companies in Calm Company Fund, formerly Earnest Capital, where we are investors and mentors. So this kind of came out of just talking to a lot of different founders about talking to customers and realizing that I really didn't have one good resource to send them that was, written to be very practical, but did not assume prior experience with user research. So there's a lot of great books on the topic, but basically the mom test is the only one that does not assume that the reader comes from a product or a UX background. And just they kind of assume a lot of things, a lot of prior knowledge. And so the idea of this was to basically make a book that anybody could just run with and understand how to interview their customers. It has scripts for a variety of common situations like churn and getting more customers, marketing and what to build in the first place, all that kind of stuff. And then also tips on how to talk to someone so that they will open up to you, because the way you ask the questions is really important. And so I started writing the book as much to solve my own problem of people asking me these questions and not having a good place to send them, as a newsletter in February, and then drafted the whole book through the newsletter, sending out a couple chapters a week, and eventually released the book this summer at the end of July, launched it on Product Hunt in August. It was #1 product of the day at the end of August. And since then, it's been reviewed by people like venture capitalist Morgan Housel and Patrick McKenzie, aka Patio 11, as we probably all know him better. And it's been really fun talking to people and what they're hoping interviewing customers can do for them, or what it has done for them, or where they've struggled with it. It's been really fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. And By the way, you started writing it February this year.
Yeah, the end of February. Yeah.
That's super fast.
I mean,
That's
it was
super
all
fast.
in my head. This is a topic that I've been working with for over 6 years now, and just kind of have been continuing my practice of it. And so when it came time to write the book, and I wanted to write about a specific thing, it was just a matter of getting it out on paper. And I all of the books I referenced were books I had already read before, and so it was like, oh, I just need to throw in the reference to this book. Like there wasn't the really only original research I did was interviewing a product manager at Stripe about Stripe's user research practices, because they heavily rely on interviewing customers, everybody from the product managers and UX people to developers, customer support people, everybody, data people are expected to interview customers. And so it was really, so that was really fun, but that was really the only sort of new thing I had to do for the book, because I've been sending people resources and whatnot for
Mhm.
so long.
That's awesome. And I'm just curious because you said about the books made for people that don't have a UX or a product background. And
Mm-hmm.
here on our community, we do have a very common situation that is people that do not have a they do have a technical background, but they do not have a product background. And every once in a while, people just go and say, hey, I'm building a product. And this product that I'm building, I became the product manager, but I was just the programmer. And I have no idea how to talk with people. And that's why I thought the book was so interesting. And let me tell you, so this is a very recurrent conversation in our community. And I wanted to ask you, if I am just a developer, I am the head developer, I'm the product head of product. How can I get going on talking to people? Because that's how I felt the book is. The book is like just a manual for people that are not used to talking to talk to people and learn something about them, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think a lot of people have a similar challenge that you have of, okay, I know I want to do this, but I don't really know what I should ask. And how do I find people? And like, how do I even get them to want to talk to me? Like, there's all of these questions that people have. And so that's why I tried to, um, you know, try to help people within the book of how to recruit people. If you have users, if you don't have users, here are all different phrases to use. Here's how to follow up with someone. Here's in a conversation, here's 5 different scripts that you can use, whether that's churn or you want to have them test a landing page or whatever that is. Some different analysis tools, some frameworks to think about. Something that readers have pointed out to me in the last couple weeks that I didn't really appreciate was that most of the books on this are written by consultants. And the books are effectively a form of lead generation for them, which, I respect that. Like, that's their business model. But there's kind of an incentive for them to hold a little bit back. So you hire them. And people noted that this is a book written by an active practitioner in a SaaS company, which is very unique. I think I know that Rob Fitzpatrick, the author of the Mom Test, he's also been a bit of a practitioner himself. And it's a great book for sort of the discovery phase. And in many ways, I feel like my book is sort of the next level of that, sort of step 2. But so the idea of the book is that you can read the book or listen to it, audio if you want, and then you can just run with it, and you don't need to go out and hire consultants. You don't need to hire me. Like, I already have a full-time job, so yeah, to kind of give you all of the tools. And then, sort of the idea of the book is that you can use it as a starting point. So like, there's email templates to recruit people to talk to you that are a starting point. There's templates that are for scripts that are a starting point. So if you're completely like, don't even know what to say, you can run with a script. But hopefully, as you do a couple more interviews and you get a sense for the kinds of things that you want to know and whatnot, then you can customize it on top of that and really more use it as a building block. But
Yeah.
since that kind of question of like, how do I even find people and what do I even say? Those are such big challenges. Basically wanted to give people sort of no excuses not to get started and just make it as easy as possible.
Do you mind if I just go with some questions from
Yeah.
what I remember? Yeah, yeah. So, uh, when I was reading, there was one quote that really caught my attention. Just listening to customers alone has benefits for you and your company, even if you don't do anything with that. It's something
Yeah.
like this. Why? The part got me because you didn't like there was just like the closing argument of one of the chapters, and I was like, even if I don't do anything, there is value in talking to, in just listening to the customers. And in my case, I am a CTO of a startup. We have the equivalent in in Europe would be Sonder. It is a startup that we have a long and short stays that we announce on Airbnb and several other spaces, and we like have software to help person to for hospitality. So we're always talking to people, but I don't see people in the product area talking to the customers. And there is a little bit of this argument that is, but we won't be doing anything with this right after. We don't have anything to offer to the customer right after. And you just said that in the book, and I was curious why.
So, have you ever been in the situation where everybody is standing around at Scrum and there's a card on the board and somebody goes, "What is this? And what is the business case behind it? And why do we need this in the first place? And what is it actually supposed to do?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I found when I was a product manager working in a bigger company that we spent a lot of time doing that in Scrum. And I would spend so much time putting all the data in the card and all screenshots and prototypes and like everything else. And we were still like, people like, why are we doing this again? But once we started interviewing customers, both interviewing them and doing usability sessions with them and including the developers in the sessions, we didn't have that problem anymore. Because even if we had tons of data, for example, behind a new feature or something that we should do, if people were able to say, "Oh, wait, I remember that person talking about that a couple weeks ago, and they were kind of like they were doing this, this, and this. But then if they could do it this way, then they could do it a lot faster." Okay, like I got it. Like things became so much more efficient because everybody was on the same page, because there wasn't that like kind of as much getting people up to speed because we were all on the same page. We'd heard it from a customer. So there's that benefit for the organization that it increases velocity and motivation because the team can picture the person who this needs to be for, even if it's really for thousands of people. They have a specific person they can think of why something needs to be easier or faster or whatnot. And then the other thing is that there are brain imaging studies done of people talking about their experiences with another person. And these parts of the brain related to pleasure and enjoyment, those light up when they talk about their experiences to someone else and are listened to. And they feel like they get to express their full experience and it's sort of witnessed. And I have noticed that the customers that we interview, they tend to be the ones who go on and become our most vocal supporters. They're offered to do testimonials. They're the ones on Twitter who are recommending other people. And actually, I just was doing a session with another group the other day, and someone was saying how they went into an interview that they thought was going to be a churn interview. And it ended up being the person like apologizing to them the whole time because they weren't able to use it like they thought they would. And then they actually signed up again and offered to do a testimonial. And they thought this person had canceled and they were gone.
Wow.
So just being listened to, like I feel like people aren't truly used to being listened to by someone who just wants to understand their experience. You know, I think and maybe this is my own sort of social perspective, but you tell someone, "Oh man, I'm having a really bad week." It's pretty common for someone to say, "Oh, next week will be better." But the problem with that is it's not validating their experience at all. But instead, if you have someone who says, "Yeah, you're having a rough time," and then they let you explain it, and then you feel seen and you feel heard and you feel like that person cares. Sorry, that's my dog.
No
and
problem.
The mail has just arrived. But so then that person knows that this is a company that cares about people, and they're never going to forget that.
Yeah.
So even if you don't go through the whole journey mapping, post-its, transcripts, annotating, all of that stuff, right? Even if you don't do any of that, Your team will be more motivated. They're not going to spend as much time with everybody trying to figure out what the heck they're supposed to be doing and why, and getting aligned on things. And those customers that you talk to are going to become fierce supporters of you.
That's cool. That's cool. For two reasons, that's really interesting because right here, right now, like my gut reaction as someone who did not read a book like this is when someone tells me, "Oh, I had a rough week," just go and ask, "Oh, why?" And you were just telling the book, "Oh no, don't go with a question. You're not like an inquisitor, like you're going to the person and say, "Oh, tell me why you're doing this," but you open up for the person to fill in. I found that really insightful. But what you just said right now, I think it's much more curious because here in Brazil we have an issue. Like, I see lots of CTOs talking about this. I don't personally see this issue, but I see them talking a lot about losing developers for American companies, and they say it is because of salary. But we deep down we know it's not because of salary, it's because people are not motivated. And when they're not motivated, they go for salaries, and salaries is one of the reasons for them to go, but actually they're leaving because they're not motivated. And talking to customers is really interesting if it is something that helps me not to retain people, but keep them motivated to understand why they're doing this product. And that's a really good point. Actually, that's a really good argument on why to one more reason why to talk to your customers. And yeah,
Yeah, no. So I was talking to a developer this morning, and she was saying how one of the worst experiences as a developer is when you spend all this time building something, and then the data comes in later, and it turns out that that was the wrong thing to build, and it didn't
yeah,
actually
yeah,
have the effect it needed to have. That is the most demoralizing and sort of soul crushing experience as a developer, to be like, wait a minute, like the people making the decisions at this company who told me that the customers needed this, so I spent months building this thing, now we're actually just going to throw it out because they actually made the wrong decision. Like, F this place. Like, but if you instead, make it very clear that the decision making process is hearing the customers explain what they're trying to do, not asking the customers for what you should do. You should not do that. But bringing them into the process so that people can understand why decisions are being made, and they see that they're coming from a good place. They see that there's not just data behind them, but there's also context and people behind them, and they feel like they're building for a person. And we all like to feel helpful. We all like to feel like we're making the world a better place and helping other people. And if you can give them that in their mind as they're building, even if the thing doesn't work out, then you'd be like, okay, you know what? We're still solving that challenge that I heard people express to me. We just got to solve it in a different way. Like it really changes your framing about when things don't work out to, okay, we just got to try something else to solve this problem in the way. There's something we missed. And it just really kind of shifts that whole perspective on decision making and roadmaps and whatnot, and motivation.
that, yeah. And that's funny because if you read the lean startup and books like this, they tell you about this, but from a entrepreneur perspective. But as just a developer inside a company, this is also interesting because you're saving not only company's time, but your own time and your own motivation and so on, everything around it. That's really curious. That's a really good insight. Yeah, that's really, really, really interesting insight. I'm gonna ask a completely different question right now, and later on, if Bart and Philippe want to ask something, I'm gonna open up, and you guys can just raise hands or just talk in. We're just for people, right? And I was just curious later on in the book because you have a little bit of a methodology for customer journey, and that part felt like a little bit more theoretical for people who have never seen a customer journey, which is good because like it's like first steps for going for something more technical. Um, do you think people had some struggle with this part? I'm not sure if you're interviewing the people that read the book, but do you feel like people had struggle with this more technical part on the journey and so on? Because just talking, I know, is not enough. It's good if you bring back what you researched and so on. How do you? how do you see like this later part of the book?
And just to make sure I understand, is the struggle with that part of the book, is that coming from your conversations with people about the book where you heard that they had struggled with it, or
No,
no?
actually,
Okay,
I'm just
yeah,
curious because it is very simple, the customer journey map that you made. At the same time, is a little bit simpler than what you find online. So
yeah.
I'm just like going from experience here.
So the idea of the book in many ways is, it's the focus of it is how to interview. So the how to talk so people will talk section and the scripts. Those are really the heart of the book. And then for a lot of the other topics, my goal was to signpost to other places. So in the book, I present a very simple version of a customer journey map because I think sometimes, people know what UX people do, and it just seems like something that involves a lot of time and a lot of post-it notes. And that can seem like a lot of time to invest in it if you're not sure what you're going to get out of it and why you should even care about that. So the goal was to do a very simplified version that's just like, okay, here's how you might sort of figure out, what are the different steps someone is going through? Where does your product fit in? How do they feel about all of those steps in there? What are they trying to do overall? But then signpost to other places where if you do want to do more in-depth research, go look at, Service Design, which is a Rosenfeld book that's fantastic, and the Jobs to be Done playbook for doing this more in depth. But it didn't really feel complete without some sort of simple thing. And I wanted something that people could kind of keep in their head of like, okay, I'm building out this timeline as they're talking to someone. So then when they're hearing about one step, they can be like, oh, so tell me, like, what are you doing before? Like, you said you had some paperwork to do before you used our software. Like, can you just tell me about that? Like, so they kind of have this sense for that they're looking for that ecosystem of what someone's doing.
Cool, cool, go, go. Yeah, it's just that because I feel like companies that some people already are in companies that have like a marketing area and so on, they do have like much more advanced um, jobs to be done and so on. And sometimes if they go with the simpler version, the people can like bring in the more complicated stuff, and that could like get
Exactly.
in the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just sort of, it's just to kind of give people a sense for it. And I mean, if you're in an organization that has a UX research team, like that's amazing. And but the work can kind of be a little bit observing it from the outside. It's not always clear what's happening and why. And so it can be like, oh, okay, they're just doing a more advanced version of this very simplified process.
Yeah. Yep. Nice, nice. Uh, Felipe and Bart, do you guys want to like talk a little bit, introduce yourselves? If you guys can't right now, it's okay as well. But just curious if you want to like have any
Yes, yes,
questions and so on. Yeah.
yes, I like a lot about the book. Thank you for the book. It's a great book, and it will help a lot us with a technical mindset because always we are looking to the technical things and to the employees, but sometimes we must to look more for the customers and understand the mind. This help us a lot. Thank you for the book. The book help us a lot with that. And my thing is, you say that's the idea to deliver the conversations for the developer. It's a great idea because uh, we are discussing about the motivation and the developer know what they are building and they are building this for this or that. That's very important thing. I guess that's probably the most important thing because the Jan said there we are losing developers for abroad. I
Mm.
agree with that. That's very sad here in Brazil. This is a thing that we see that there are great developers going to outside. It's not good for us. But part of that, I believe that's motivation. And what do you think? It's an emphasis for with the customers and if a empathy with the developers too. And what do you think in just we have a kind of rotation of who ask the questions with the customers. So imagine today or will be the developer to ask the questions or something like that to be more inclusive, to be the customer success will ask the questions as usual, but more kind of a kind of rotation in the team. Today, the internship will ask this the question. What do you think about that? Because uh, in the end, it's about understanding the problem. If you will not resolve the problem, but if you understand deeply, will help you the people be more motivated, something like that. When I was reading the book, I thought about that. Make a kind of rotation, but maybe the lonely rotation, that just one will ask the question, will interview. What do you think about?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And so in the book, I recommend that you have no more than 2 people asking questions in any given interview. Otherwise, someone can sort of feel like they're getting ganged up on, because you want them to feel like they're in control, the person being interviewed. So I think, what you could do is rotate them. And I think that the examples from Stripe are kind of helpful here, because you can see how, the entire team works together to develop the script, and they all workshop it together. Maybe they practice interview each other just to make sure the questions kind of flow and work. And then when you're in the interview, you have one person who's sort of the lead interviewer, and then you have someone else who is sort of tag teaming the interview as well. And then you can have other people sitting in on the call in the background, who are just observing. And I would suggest having people observe at first before they ask questions, just so they can understand how to ask the questions and get a sense for the flow of everything and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, that idea of having people rotate into talking to customers is fantastic. And actually, the company my husband used to work for before he went full time is a startup called Storyblocks. They're a stock video and audio startup. And once a month, everybody would have to take a turn on customer support. So they weren't doing interviewing yet at the time, but they so once a month, so that the customer support team could have their monthly meeting. Everybody else in the company, from marketing to developers to accounting, would be on customer support. And the days that he was on those calls were always days he would come home like excited about something, me like, oh my God, I can't believe like I found this bug, and then this person was trying to do this thing, and then actually while we were on the call, like I was able to solve it for them, and you just like lighting up and being so excited to have talked to someone who was using what they are making and helping them. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. And to what you've been saying about the retention challenges with developers, making them feel like they're a part of the process, they're a part of the decision making, they're a part of where this company is going, can make them more invested in the company and its customers and what your mission is, by connecting them with it directly.
Yes, that's it. That's it. And thank you. Yeah, that's a great point because we have seen this a lot. Because the developers, they are part of the company, they are important. So when I see this here, and I see this in a lot of startups here, the developer just develops some code, some piece of code, and its job is done. But don't build a propose to the for life or for something else when when he can see or she can see the things that what's building working. That's a great thing. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Felipe. Not sure if Bart is available as well,
Yes, I'm
but
here. I'm here. I've been following. Hi,
okay.
Michele. Thank you for this talk. I did not read the book yet. I'm kind of coming from this as a blank slate, so to say. I don't know. I didn't know about the book yet. I just joined more out of curiosity. And hearing all this, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think there's some great ideas. I'm curious how you think, because you say that it's that developers often end up more motivated, like your husband comes home excited after doing the support because he discovered new things. People have more empathy for the customer, etc. But do you find that most developers end up actually, or even especially before they start actually doing this and getting into the routine, do you find it something they want to do? Or do you find, because I hear a lot of developers, so this is not my profile, but I hear a lot of developers be like, the fewer meetings, the better. I just want to spend my whole day just with my head in the code.
Mm-hmm. So I think there are definitely people who are suspicious in my experience at first. And there's also can be sometimes a management perspective, whether that comes from the top or from the project manager, that the developer's best use of time is to be coding, and we should just have them coding as much as possible, and anything else is a waste of their time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're laughing because I think you've heard this. And the thing, I think about that is, okay, so at a customer interview, maybe you do, bring them in once a week or once a month even. That's half an hour or an hour of their time. But then, from my experience, we're also willing to make them sit in a 4-hour planning meeting because nobody could understand what we were doing and why and how things were actually supposed to work and what the whole context of it was. So we were willing to spend all of this extra time in Scrum, all of this extra time in planning, all of this extra time in retros because people were not aligned on who we were building for and why. Even if we had heaps of data saying what we should be doing, not having that context made the whole process go so much slower. So yes, in the beginning, some people are like, wait, why should I spend my time doing this? Like, what is the value of this? But then you get them into one or two of them, and then all of a sudden it just like the light bulb goes off and it's like, oh no, we got to get more people in this too. Like, and I got to switch things around so I can make time to be there. And actually one of my coworkers at the company I used to work at now, who runs user research there, every day, all day Tuesday for her is user research, whether it's prototype testing so people can, or they can see, why aren't people converting on this landing page? Let's put it in front of people, to doing interviews, to talking to people who are churning, to people who just joined. And people can just drop in on those interviews and they know that every Tuesday those are happening and they can just show up at 11 o'clock and there will be something for them to observe. And if they want to be more involved, if there's a specific problem or project that they're really interested in, a problem they want to solve, then they can be part of building the script and maybe even interviewing, as Felipe mentioned. It doesn't take many interviews for someone to see the value of it.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, actually. And this is a very good point for two reasons. People sometimes create routines or create bureaucracy to justify things. For example, we create all these routines around like Scrum and everything else, but actually they're just excuses sometimes to not do other stuff. That's really curious. Another thing as well about this, we could go on. We could go and talk in hours about this part as well. I'm just curious because I don't know how much time you have left, and it's like almost an hour or 20 minutes more than we were scheduled. And there are people getting into right now, so I'm actually gonna deny because just like the ending of the conversation. And about getting developers participating and so on, it's much more about if you have a routine. I really like that point. And it's just like making bread. If you bake bread every time, every day, and people will just come, they will come for the smell. They will not come because you actually ask them to come. So yeah, there's this part. It's really curious. One last thing, because I know some people will be watching this later on, and they also or probably did not get the book yet. and people will maybe ask you to participate, and not participate, to a Portuguese version and so on. Do you have like any plans to get it in other regions or other languages, or is it not something on your scope right now?
So that's such an awesome question, and I'm so touched that you've asked it. Um, I just launched the book a couple weeks ago, and I haven't really thought about that yet. But actually, I was noticing a conversation among, I believe it was Arvid Kahl, was talking to people about his books on Twitter and getting them translated. And someone was recommending that find people who are really passionate about the book in those languages to translate it for you. Of course, pay them, because then they really understand the context of the book and not only what the words mean, but really what you're trying to say when you say something.
Mhm.
So that, quite frankly, it isn't something I've really thought about. The book has almost sold 500 copies. I think I last checked, I was like 493, which still feels sort of surreal to me. So it feels a little bit getting ahead of myself to start thinking about translations. But that's absolutely something I would like to be at, and I don't. I don't really know when that's going to happen, at what point that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, like, absolutely, that could be on the docket if, you know, I sort of, I don't really know where this horse is going. So
I open my mic to agree with you, Jen. Please do that. Translate to
Yeah,
Portuguese.
yeah, like
That would be a
there are a lot
great
of
thing
people in
for us.
Brazil that are not used
Yeah,
to reading books in English, especially technical books. So even if they are
yeah,
programmers, they're not used to that.
yeah.
yeah. Well, that's really interesting.
This is a big deal for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes. I mean, like I'm an American, but I live in Denmark, and I'm married to a Dane, and I also speak German, and so I'm definitely like that's something that I'm sympathetic to, um, and yeah, I mean that could be a thing. If anyone wants to translate it, let me know.
Yeah, sure.
Uh,
Actually, opening up for anyone watching this as well, if you wanna like help with this, because I know sometimes people not
I'll
only
pay
want that,
you.
but
You
like
know,
they want to move on with this. The thing is,
yeah.
if someone is interested in that, they should reach out to you. How to reach out to you?
Yes. Okay. So probably the best way is usually just on Twitter because I spend too much time there. And my DMs are open. So I am MJW Hansen. That's Hansen with an EN on Twitter. But you can also email me at Michele at deployempathy.com. And that's Michele with one L. And so I can just send that to you and you can, yeah, you can share my email with people. Um, yeah, feel free to reach out. I also have a newsletter, also called Deploy Empathy. You can find a link to it from my Twitter and also from the book's website, deployempathy.com. So I'm writing that newsletter every week or every other week at this point. Um, and also releasing an audiobook right now as a private podcast. So that's going on. Um, Yeah, I'm super jazzed asking about translations. That's it's kind of like a huge compliment in a way, and it really sounds like this, like, you know, I don't talk about interviewing in a team context too much in the book because I really wanted to make it approachable for people who are just starting out or don't have teams. But there's this question around developer motivation and the role of user interviews is really, really interesting to me. And actually, I have a friend who's writing a book on empathy-driven development, like how to use
Oh,
empathy when you're writing commit messages and all this kind of stuff. And actually, I kind of want to. I think I'm going to give her a call and see what she's thinking about that too, because it definitely. I mean, it definitely is a problem. And if you can make people feel, you know, valued and also help them see the impact of their work. I think that's the thing about software is unlike other businesses that unlike selling something in a store, you don't see the person's face light up when they try on your dress for the first time, right? That you're selling
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Like you don't see that moment of delight when they hit your login screen. Like, right? Like there's no feedback like that. And so getting people in front of the customers gives them that feedback, that good feeling of, wow, I built something that helped somebody else. And that carries through into their work and to their personal life and to their value that they feel as a person.
I'm gonna do my best to share all of this. Okay, I'm gonna see how the recording goes. Never did recording like this, just like for conference stuff. So if it's okay, I'm gonna send it for you, and I'm gonna be sending the community and eventually on our LinkedIn and stuff like this. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
Michelle, thank you very much. Philippe and Bart also thank you as well. I'm gonna just stop the recording right now, and that's it. I stopped the recording, and wow, thank you very much. Actually, thank you very much because it went just fine. It went really, really, really fine. I do have to go. Unfortunately, I do have like a very important meeting right now. But if you guys want to keep talking later on, feel free. Okay, it's just I'm so sorry because I do have like a meeting like 2 or 3 minutes that I cannot miss.
That's totally fine. I have to run myself. You mentioned it would be posted on LinkedIn. Would that be like publicly so that I could show it to other people or
Actually, it depends on
privately?
you. It depends
Okay.
on you. How do you feel about this? Because I wasn't planning on recording, so actually, it didn't stop recording. I'm gonna.
Okay. Well, why
I
don't you
have to
see
drop.
how it goes and let me go? I'm totally fine with it being posted publicly, or I don't know if you guys have a podcast or whatnot, but like that's
Yeah,
totally fine.
actually, we don't have any stuff like this. We don't
Okay.
have like, any public stuff. So I'm gonna see how it goes and
Yeah.
see.